Amidst the frantic pace of the modern world, people often harbor a profound illusion to keep their lives on the right track. They are forced to act continuously and maintain absolute control over everything. They endlessly cling to fractured relationships, force themselves down seemingly perfect career paths, and drain their energy to mold reality according to a rigid, preconceived blueprint. Yet, an ironic truth always lies in wait to expose them. The tighter their hands try to grip control, the heavier and more suffocating everything becomes, as if life itself is quietly rebelling and coldly resisting all their forced efforts. Why do we lock ourselves in such an exhausting cycle? The answer lies in a grand deception created by the mind. We constantly confuse ceaseless action with a sense of security. In the hidden corners of our psychology, the ego always exists as a dictator craving certainty, deeply terrified of silent, empty spaces. Whenever anxiety creeps in, the only solution this dictator offers is to do something immediately, even if that action brings no real value. Busyness becomes an anesthetic, a perfect shield for the ego to hide behind rather than facing the truth within the soul. Consider the story of Claire, a 32-year-old marketing director, who was always admired for her boundless energy and ability to plan every aspect of her life. Whenever her work hit a dead end or she felt slightly empty, she would dive into registering for a new course, map out a new project, or pack her schedule with unnamed appointments. But in a rare moment of stillness, Claire admitted that she was truly terrified of empty time. Her busyness did not stem from a passion to contribute, but simply because filling her time made her feel like she was still steering her life. Continuous action here is not an expression of life, but a desperate attempt to avoid the precarious feeling when everything comes to a halt. However, the human psychological system does not operate according to the logical thinking of the ego. Our mind is like a deep, still lake. When panic and the desire for control constantly agitate the water's surface, everything becomes murky, completely obscuring what is truly happening beneath. The more we thrash about to dispel the fog, the thicker the fog becomes. Only when we are willing to let go, stop molding reality, and allow the water to find its peace, does the quiet wisdom at the bottom of the lake begin to reveal itself. When our efforts to stir the lake no longer bring any escape or illusion of safety, we are often pushed into a much more subtle and perplexing experience, the moment when everything in life suddenly stops flowing. Plans that were progressing smoothly suddenly slow down, work becomes unreasonably heavy, and all the tools and skills that once brought resounding success now seem completely ineffective. This feeling is exactly like putting all your life strength into rowing a boat on a river that has run dry. The harder you swing the oars, the more the boat scrapes against the dry, rough mud, leaving you bruised and exhausted, yet not inching forward a single step. In the human consciousness, there has always been an enduring image of a seasoned fisherman drifting on the ocean for many days without catching a single fish. Those around him whisper with judgment that his luck has run out, but that fisherman does not panic, nor does he desperately cast his net haphazardly in all directions just to prove he is still working. He profoundly understands a simple yet deep truth, that the ocean always has its own sacred rhythm. There are days when the sea generously offers heavy schools of fish, but there are also days when the ocean sinks into absolute stillness, withdrawing into itself to rest. A wise seafarer is never so arrogant as to try to wring the ocean dry on a day without fish, nor does he force the sea to bestow favors according to his own small desires. The inner life of a human being also fluctuates to a similar rhythm, featuring cycles of abundant outflow and cycles of quiet retreat. When the flow suddenly runs dry, our proud ego often falls into a state of extreme bewilderment. It deludes itself into thinking that we are not doing well enough, that we need to be more disciplined, forcing ourselves to wake up earlier and work later. But through the profound lens of analytical psychology, this stagnation is absolutely not a sign of weakness or failure. When you stubbornly cling to and force yourself to walk a path that can no longer contain your truth, the first thing to disappear is not opportunities from the outside world, but the vibrant life force from within. The withdrawal of energy is not a cruel punishment from fate, but is actually a brilliantly intelligent mechanism of self-protection and adjustment by the unconscious system. It is akin to trying to plant a seed in a land carrying toxic and barren elements. No matter how diligently you add nutrients, how meticulously you water it, and how carefully you shield it, that plant will still gradually wither, droop, and shed its leaves. The core problem does not lie in your incorrect care or lack of effort, but because that foundational soil was never meant for its growth in the first place. As long as the plant is not uprooted from that toxic soil, all efforts to nurture it are merely a useless draining of vitality. The stagnation, the feeling of lethargy, and the depletion of life force are a deeply earnest invitation from the depths of your soul, asking you to change your environment and seek a new space to take root, and absolutely not an urging for you to continue bracing yourself. If our energy keeps flowing abundantly into wrong choices, we might travel a very long distance, wasting countless years before shockingly realizing we have been climbing a ladder leaning against the wrong wall. Therefore, when heavy fatigue sets in, when all doors seem to slam shut and enthusiasm gradually fades, do not hastily use your iron will to whip your own mind. That is the sacred moment when the river of life is gently yet firmly stripping the control from the hands of the ego. It earnestly asks you to stop, lower your oars, and cherish that stagnation. Consider the depletion of energy as your most honest traveling companion, a courageous messenger stepping forward to say that this path has closed. Accepting this silent, empty truth opens a space for inner empathy, allowing us to realize that sometimes the greatest effort is not trying to move forward at all costs, but courageously standing still, making way for quiet wisdom to guide us and waiting for the new waters to slowly rise. The withdrawal of energy is rarely a sudden blow that pushes us off a cliff instantly. Before everything enters a phase of complete collapse, our unconscious always patiently sends out incredibly subtle signals as warnings. It could be a lingering, unexplained headache, a soulless emptiness invading your chest every morning upon waking, or a causeless depression casting a shadow over the things that once captivated you. However, because the ego always craves to maintain control and clings to the familiar, we often choose to ignore those whispers. Marcus is a 40-year-old software engineer working in Silicon Valley, who dedicated 8 grueling years to a giant tech corporation. During his final 2 years, every morning for Marcus was a persistent battle just to drag himself out of bed. His body became heavy, his mind stagnant, and his heartbeat was always racing in anxiety. Instead of stopping to listen to the message that life was sending, Marcus used his sharp, logical engineer's mindset to rationalize and crush those warnings. He convinced himself that he was merely going through a temporary phase of stress, that the only solution was to drink more coffee, stay up later, and work even harder to overcome the difficulties. He treated his body like a machine that needed to be squeezed for maximum output rather than a temple that needed to be heard. And the inevitable consequence occurred when his unconscious system decided to intervene by pulling the emergency brake. Marcus fell into a state of total exhaustion both physically and mentally. His fitful sleep disappeared, giving way to chronic insomnia and severe panic attacks that made it impossible for him to step foot into the office for another day. The burnout forced him to submit his resignation, leaving behind a career that his ego once considered the absolute guarantee of safety. Imagine our psychological state as the dashboard of a car rolling down the highway. When the engine inside starts to malfunction, the car does not stall immediately. Instead, a small beep sounds along with a blinking warning light on the screen. If the driver is alert and humble enough to pull over and check, the issue will be gently resolved. But if the arrogant driver uses a piece of black tape to cover that blinking light so he can keep pressing the gas pedal, harboring the naive belief that out of sight means the risk has vanished. A grand, devastating accident will be the only way the machine can force him to stop. At the concept of burnout that modern society often labels as a terrible failure actually harbors a profoundly liberating meaning. We need to shift our perspective and heal our deeply negative obsession with this state. Psychological exhaustion is absolutely not a cruel punishment brought down upon the weak, but it is the strongest, most resolute language of the soul when the ego continuously turns a deaf ear to the truth. When the gentle whispers of intuition are ignored, when subtle feelings of insecurity are trampled by reason, the unconscious has no other way than to create a total physical or psychological breakdown to strip away the ego's most dangerous weapon, which is action. Marcus' collapse was not the end of his life, but a fiercely resolute salvation from a toxic environment that was slowly corroding his true self. The darkness falls not to bury us, but to force the eyes, overly weary from endlessly chasing external illusions, to finally close, thereby opening the third eye that looks inward. The alarm bell from the unconscious rings harshly to shatter the sparkling glass cage we have locked ourselves in, reminding us that this life is far too sacred to be traded for empty titles or blueprints designed by fear. Realizing this, we will stop resenting the moments our bodies go on strike, and begin to learn how to bow our heads in gratitude because the deep wisdom within has always been keeping watch and pulling us back right at the edge of the abyss of losing ourselves. When the emergency brake is pulled and the warning signals are no longer ignored, we are officially pushed into the most naked yet pivotal moment of a human life: total collapse. A job abruptly ends, a relationship shatters, or a plan that once seemed so incredibly certain suddenly crumbles to pieces. Standing before the ruins of what was once considered the purpose of life, the proud ego instantly plunges into sheer panic, perceiving these moments as an ultimate loss and profound chaos. But if we can transcend the fog of fear, we will see that these collapses are not always destruction, but in truth, they are sometimes a process of profound restructuring of the soul itself. In ancient cultures, humanity has passed down a majestic symbol that vividly describes this process: the story of the phoenix. This mythical creature does not simply experience a natural rebirth, but before a new life cycle can begin, it must go through a process of complete combustion. The fierce flames will burn away its entire old form until nothing remains but layers of ashes, and paradoxically, it is precisely from those cold ashes that a new bird proudly emerges. For the ancients, this story was absolutely not a tragedy, but it carried the meaning of a magnificent symbol of transformation. It reminds us that there are certain phases in life that can only conclude through complete dissolution before a new form can rise. This principle of destruction for creation exists not only in mythology but has also been clearly proven by modern science, as many living systems develop in a remarkably similar manner. In the field of neurobiology, when a human being changes how they think or learns something entirely new, the brain is forced to reorganize its neural connections. The old patterns must gradually weaken so that new connections can form more robustly. From a scientific standpoint, profound growth rarely occurs without being accompanied by a form of dismantling old structures. The life of human beings operates exactly according to that same principle. An easy way to visualize this process is to think about rebuilding a house. If the foundation of a building has begun to crack from flawed expectations, desperately buying more buckets of expensive paint to recoat the walls will never solve the core issue. Sooner or later, that entirely glamorous outward structure will become exceedingly dangerous, and in such situations, the only way to build something more solid is to ruthlessly dismantle the entire old structure to start anew from the foundation. Under the shallow gaze of the ego, this process looks exactly like a cruel devastation. But under the lens of authentic growth, this total destruction is the most necessary preparation. The suffering from loss is not a deep pit to bury you, but a sacred privilege for you to shed your skin, abandon the tight, restrictive shells, and clear the path to reconstruct a life more radiant and authentic than ever before. When the ego finally surrenders, letting go of the frantic desire to control and accepting to stand still amidst the ashes of collapse, a space of emptiness and absolute stillness opens up. Contrary to the initial fear, it is precisely within this unforced space that the magic of new creation truly begins. Life is inherently quite delicate. It rarely screams with grand, birth-shattering miracles or hands us clear, detailed roadmaps. Instead, it gently reveals new directions through subtle signs, hiding under the guise of small circumstances that appear right at the moment we need them most. In the treasury of psychology, the great thinker Carl Jung called this beautiful phenomenon synchronicity, or the art of meaningful coincidences. These are the magical moments when two completely unrelated physical events happen simultaneously, yet carry a profound message capable of shifting the consciousness of the person experiencing them. Try to quiet your mind and remember, have you ever let your thoughts wander to an old friend you haven't heard from in a long time, and at that very second, the phone in your hand vibrated with a message from that exact person? Or when you are sinking in confusion before a life-or-death crossroad, and suddenly you chance upon a passing comment from a stranger on the street, or glance at a paragraph that seems written just to untie the very knot tighten in your chest. If dissected by the dry ego, these events would be brushed aside as blind, random occurrences. But Carl Jung asserted that meaningful coincidences are always present in life. It simply requires us to have observant eyes and a soul quiet enough to recognize them. When they appear exactly at the crucial touch points of our journey, they become the gentle whispers of the universe. An unscheduled, chance encounter, an opportunity suddenly knocking just as we let go and give up all hope of searching, a new door automatically opening right as the old path brutally slammed shut. These are absolutely not senseless arrangements, but the rhythmic dance of circumstance. When we stop thrashing around, free ourselves from forced paths, and shatter narrow prejudices and outdated images of ourselves, the world around us also seems to begin restructuring itself in a highly sophisticated way to answer that internal transformation. Every puzzle piece of seemingly disconnected events begins to connect, like a grand painting slowly taking shape from the invisible realm. Life at this point is no longer a rigid blueprint full of pressure, but becomes a poetic stroll on a path blanketed in fog. Standing before that thick fog, the ego constantly screams, demanding a false sense of security by insisting on seeing the destination clearly miles away. But the profound wisdom of letting go teaches us a liberating lesson. You do not need to, and in fact can never, see the entire journey ahead, but can only clearly see a few steps immediately close to your reality. Our only task is to gather enough courage to lift our feet and step forward, because each time we advance, the next blurry stretch of the path will automatically reveal itself from the fog. Realizing this truth is the moment we smash the grandiose illusion of having to manipulate every variable of human life with our own hands. We begin to learn to look back at the journey we have passed and marvel at the realization that the most important turns always appeared right when we were ready to step into a new chapter. From there, we can accept walking into the uncertain fog with the most tranquil mindset, trusting absolutely that there is a deeper wisdom quietly steering circumstances and gently rearranging order on behalf of our desperate efforts. As the fog of control gradually dissipates, we begin looking for signs to know if we are truly on the right path. Society often measures success through flashy external metrics like fame or wealth, but the inner compass operates on a completely different frame of reference. The ultimate and clearest sign proving that you are walking on a path that belongs to you is not the applause of approval or the constantly growing numbers in your bank account, but a remarkably tranquil state of mind. Look at the story of David, a 35-year-old lawyer in Boston, who was draped in the perfect shell of social success. Despite possessing everything people covet, David always carried tired eyes and lived in a constant state of tension, as if he had to bear the weight of the whole world on his heavy shoulders. However, In those rare moments when he let go of his powerful lawyer identity to immerse himself in his long-forgotten passion for writing and studying psychology, his breathing suddenly slowed, his facial features relaxed, and his entire physical being seemed soothed by a cool stream of water. That peace is the moment his soul was allowed to breathe the air of freedom, to touch the very core of his true self. This meditative state is exactly like wearing a pair of shoes. When you try to force your feet into a pair of tight shoes simply because they look sparkling and are admired by others, every step is a smoldering torture that makes you constantly think about the pain. But when you choose a pair of shoes that perfectly fit your feet, you even forget their existence and simply stroll freely along any road. Inner peace does not mean that life from now on will be devoid of thorny challenges or stormy days, but that you no longer have to wear heavy armor to brace yourself against your own natural flow. The most profoundly humane lesson that this philosophical journey brings is an awakening reminder that life is not a brutal battlefield for us to use an iron will to conquer and strip away control. The core value of life lies in understanding, in compassion for oneself, in learning to accept and harmonize with the quiet wisdom of the vast universe. We only truly live fully when we know how to lay down the sharp weapons of the proud ego, gently step back, and allow the great flow of life to lead the way in the most natural and wise manner. Dear friends, after traversing through these profound philosophical perspectives together, how do you feel about today's story, and have you suddenly caught a glimpse of your own shadow within it? Try to connect it with your actual life. Remember those moments when letting go brought you liberation, and do not hesitate to leave your comments below, sharing your experiences and feelings from the bottom of your heart so that we can listen to, understand, and heal each other. If you have found relief, peaceful moments of quiet, and positive values from this video, please remember to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share the video with your loved ones to continue receiving many engaging and meaningful videos every day. We sincerely thank you for opening your hearts, dedicating your precious time to listen, and walking with us on this journey returning to inner peace. We wish all of you watching this video abundant health, a deeply joyful and fulfilling spiritual life, and that every day passes in relaxing tranquility. Goodbye and see you again in the next videos.